We are Unitarian Universalists. We are brave, curious, and compassionate thinkers and doers. We are diverse in faith, ethnicity, history, and spirituality, but aligned in our desire to make a difference for the good. We have a track record of standing on the side of love, justice, and peace. We have radical roots and a history as self-motivated spiritual people. We think for ourselves and recognize that life experience influences our beliefs more than anything else. We need not think alike to love alike. We are people of many beliefs and backgrounds. People with a religious background, people with none, people who believe in God, people who don't, and people who let the mystery be. We are Unitarian Universalist and Buddhist, Christian, Hindu, humanist, Jewish, Muslim, pagan, atheist, and agnostic, believers in God, and more. We are people of all sexual orientations and gender identities. We seek to welcome you, your whole self, with all your truths and doubts, your worries, your hopes. Join us on this extraordinary adventure of faith. Deep peace of the running waves to you. Deep peace of the flowing air to you. Deep peace of the quiet earth to you. Deep peace of the shining stars to you. Deep peace of the infinite peace to you.
Our chalice lighting words this morning. Be ye lamps unto yourselves, be your confidence. Hold to the truth within yourselves as to the only lamp. I've chosen these words for our meditation this morning. Diego Valeri is the author. You who have an eye for miracles, regard the bud now appearing on the bare branch of the fragile young tree. It's a mere dot, nothing, but already it's a flower, already a fruit, already its own death and resurrection. Let's spend a minute or so in quiet meditation. Namaste. We think we know cultural appropriation when we see it. Blackface, for example, pretty obvious. What about namaste? Yoga students say it to each other at the end of a session. Namaste is actually a greeting, a formal greeting, originally invoking the divine, but now more commonly said in India when meeting and greeting elders, someone of a higher rank. Many Asians are bewildered by our Western use of the term, especially its use at the end of a time together, or that peers say it to one another. Excuse me. What about you use singing Christmas carols, or Jewish hymns, or putting up peace poles or Buddhist prayer flags? What about deliberately staging photos to include Muslims to promote a Democratic candidate, or using diversity to promote Unitarian Universalism? As we've heard a lot over recent years about cultural appropriation. And this morning I'll focus on religious appropriation, and I'll give you a lot more answers than, I'm sorry, a lot more questions than answers. I wish I had all the answers, but I don't. Religions have borrowed from each other for forever. Romans borrowed from the Greeks. The Christian Bible borrowed from Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, the beliefs of Mesopotamia, and of course, Judaism. The Ten Commandments were largely borrowed from ancient Egyptian and Mesopotamian religions. Moses' experience of receiving the Ten Commandments supposedly occurred about 1490 BCE, but the Egyptian Book of the Dead, dating from approximately 2600 BCE, has significant similarities. The ancient Mesopotamian moral laws, the Code of Hammurabi, dates from about 1772 or so BCE, also predating the biblical commandments, and are also inscribed in stone, suggesting moral concepts becoming solid laws, mandating obedience. The idea of the Holy Trinity is not mentioned in the Bible, and that absence, of course, led to our own Unitarian beliefs. That concept, however, predates Christianity by thousands of years. The belief that divinity is composed of three entities is a recurrent religious idea found in Hinduism, ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Sumerian mythology. Many ancient gods and heroes are believed to have performed miracles similar to those ascribed to Jesus, turning water into wine, healings, restoring life to the dead, ascending to divinity. The biblical tales of Jonah and the whale, Samson's mythical strength, virgin birth, the Tower of Babel, the creation story of being tempted and tricked by a woman and thrown out of paradise. These are all found in much older legends. A God who died and was raised was a recurrent feature throughout ancient religions, appearing in the Near East, Mesopotamia, Greece, ancient Turkey, Egypt, and Sumeria. The biblical story of Noah's Ark is almost exactly the same as the far older Mesopotamian legend, the Epic of Gilgamesh, 1,500 years earlier. That tale, too, ends with the hero sending out a dove to see if the waters had receded. The book of Proverbs, attributed to King Solomon, replicates the earlier Egyptian instruction of a menemope, virtually word for word. So religious borrowing and combining has always existed and likely always will. Religious communities interact, traditions spread. It's often how religions are formed in the first place. Certified yoga instructor, prize-winning author, religious ethicist, and religion professor Liz Buchar regularly leads a study abroad program among the Camino de Santiago in northern Spain. Dr. Buchar writes in her book, Stealing My Religion, that some religious borrowings are benign, others offensive, whether we're doing so intentionally or not, whether it's for political, economic, or therapeutic reasons. Buchar stresses that religious appropriation occurs when we adopt religious practices in ways that exacerbate existing systems of structural injustice. And we should strive to recognize when religious borrowing becomes religious appropriation. The hijab is used to sell soda, used as props in political ads. The Buddha used to market vegan food, crucifixes used as props in pop music videos. Religious clothing sometimes becomes a fashion trend. Buchar reminds us the faithful may not appreciate symbols of their faith being used these ways. Dr. Buchar is one of the 29% of Americans who identify as religiously unaffiliated. When she was younger, she copied the singer Madonna's look from her 1989 MTV video Like a Virgin. Wearing the cross for Buchar was, like for Madonna, not at all for religious piety, but rather for its symbolism of rebellion and blasphemy. Buchar writes regularly about Muslim fashion and has worn it during fieldwork. As a religion professor, she includes non-Catholic, even non-Christian, and atheist students on the Camino pilgrimage she leads. She readily admits she is a repeat offender. A Muslim woman, Ayana Lee, found herself in an Elizabeth Warren ad after attending a Wisconsin rally protesting the candidate. As reported in The Guardian, another Muslim woman was recorded weeping at the 2016 Democratic National Convention. Her chosen candidate, Bernie Sanders, whose campaign she had been working on, had just conceded. Hillary for America tweeted the woman's image with the tagline, "We made history." In Philadelphia in May of 2019, Muslim Sabira Mahmood, a teenage Bernie Sanders supporter, attended a Biden kickoff event. Her image later showed up in a Biden campaign promotional video. In an interview, she explained she wasn't clapping or cheering or even smiling, and said they only used it to profit off my hijab. The campaigns of liberal candidates know that we religious liberals and secularists view candidates showing diversity in their advertising as more favorable, using appropriation to mobilize us. Those advertising diversity get to pat themselves on the back without actually doing anything helpful, like when businesses will put out a pride flag in June, but actually have policies which are indifferent to or even harmful to LGBTQIA+ folks. It's called liberal virtue signaling, but it doesn't do anything to address injustice. Over 36 million Americans practice yoga, and a third of Americans have tried yoga, making it one of the most widespread forms of religious appropriation. Yoga is marketed as vaguely spiritual. Overt religious elements were intentionally discarded, although yoga still has religiously coded language and behaviors: enlightenment, centering to honor the divine within us, namaste, the chanting of Om. Om is a sacred mantra in Hinduism and Tibetan Buddhism, representing the primordial sound of the universe. Yoga's association with wellness stems from religious appropriation. Bukhar writes that yoga likely developed in Indian communities that practiced what we now call Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism, part of devotional practice. In different movements, various stakeholders promoted yoga practices, disconnecting them from larger religious contexts to make them more valuable to British colonialism and Indian nationalism originally, and then later our American wellness movement and culture. Following the consecutive mass shootings on March 15th, 2019 at 2 New Zealand mosques that happened during Friday's prayer and where 51 people died, many Western liberal non-Muslim women started to wear the hijab as a sign of solidarity. Many believed it to be a beautiful showing of connection between Western feminists and Muslim women. However, it centered non-Muslims in the conversation and, despite intentions, exacerbated gender Islamophobia in its attempt to combat it. People often want the religious experience, but without the religion. All pilgrims, even the non-religious, are hoping for a transformative experience. And the Roman Catholic Church gives out officially stamped certificates of completion for the Camino pilgrimage, even to non-Catholics, even to non-Christians, to do the non-religious, they don't care. For people who wait in line hours to receive them after spending weeks walking the pilgrimage trail. The authority of the experience is what allows folks to justify the religious appropriation. Bukhar writes that some of her students see themselves as successfully walking the line between being religious and being merely a tourist. They see themselves as spiritual pilgrims. We UUs are encouraged to build our own personal theology. It's been in our advertising. Our UU faith is heavily pluralistic, at least in principle. Speaking of principles, if you have easy access to your gray hymnal and you turn to the very first hymn, go to hymn number 1 in your hymn book. And then when you get to hymn number 1, turn back 1 page. And on that page, it has our principles and sources. Halfway down the page is the list of our sources. The living tradition we share draws from many sources. So borrowing from other religions and traditions is pretty much coded in our UU DNA, isn't it? And if you look up the sources on the UUA website, you'll see a photo of 7 people, certainly deliberately chosen and staged to reflect diversity. There's a white appearing woman wearing a headscarf, an African-American woman, a man wearing a yarmulke. A lot of our photos on the UUA website reflect diversity. And while some of our congregations are that diverse, many are not. We UUs sell spirituality too. By selling a diversity maybe we don't actually have. We're open to it, we want it, we'd love it. But I think many of our congregations are not there yet. What about when we hold on to traditions connected to beliefs we no longer have? Many UUs were raised Christian but no longer identify that way. And yet we may still decorate our sanctuaries and homes for Christmas. Those of us raised in Jewish homes may still hold or attend Passover Seders, like Hanukkah candles. It begs the question, can you appropriate your own religious heritage? As someone raised Catholic, but who no longer considers herself Catholic, I haven't for many decades, I don't go up to receive communion when attending Mass with my Catholic family members, but I still put up Christmas decorations, make Christmas cookies. Is it okay for us to borrow religious practices for our own spiritual needs, for educational purposes? How about just because we did those things growing up and we still like to do them? And what about if we're doing them privately in our own homes versus what we do here in our own sanctuaries or buildings? And there's not necessarily consensus about what counts as core religious practices, nor whether outsiders borrowing these practices cause harm or not, and what that harm might entail. Who gets to decide who is an insider versus an outsider? Religious communities have porous borders. Fixed criteria of who counts as an insider versus an outsider reinforces stereotypes and leaves out members who don't fit the mold. Orthodox or more conservative members often discount the authenticity of more liberally leaning members. Given the diversity within religious communities, religious insiders rarely agree on what behaviors are okay for others to borrow, which appropriations are merely exploitative, and which are profoundly offensive. And this can involve endorsing or sanctioning some members' experiences over other members. Appropriating religious clothing is ethically challenged because of its specific religious function. You can't say a hijab is not religious just because some Muslim women don't wear it. Just like you can't say keeping kosher isn't religious just because some Jews don't keep kosher. Within every religion, there are different opinions about what counts as correct practice. Does someone keep kosher? In Reform Judaism, it's pretty much left up to the individual. If someone does keep kosher, how? Maybe they just abstain from shellfish and pork. Do they mix their meat and dairy? Do they keep 2 or 3, even 4 sets of dishes, one for meat, another for dairy dishes, another set of each to use during Passover? I've known people that have done all of those. Who gets to give permission to borrow? Clergy are often allowed to act as spokespersons, but then this gives the power of permission to the hierarchy, sweeping away internal diversity. Should the Pope be allowed to speak for all Catholics, let alone all Christians? The theme of the 2018 Met Gala, the Metropolitan Museum of Art's lavish annual fundraiser, was Heavenly Bodies, Fashion and the Catholic Imagination, kicking off the Met's exhibit on Catholic influences in fashion. Celebrities went all out. Singer Katy Perry came as a golden Versace angel with 6-foot feathered wings. Actor Jared Leto was Gucci Jesus. Zendaya was Joan of Arc in a chain-link Versace design. Another celebrity came as the Virgin Mary, her gown trimmed in gold 7 daggers protruding from her chest. Sarah Jessica Parker had a complete nativity scene on her head. As you can imagine, as the images spread online, outrage, not just the Catholics, of course, blasphemy, sacrilegious cosplay, the hashtag "my religion is not your costume" spread. But the Vatican supported the event by donating over 40 items to the exhibit. A Roman Catholic cardinal with a Vatican appointment attended the event. He's the one who loaned Rihanna his mitre for her Pope costume that she wore that night. Vatican endorsement and participation seemed to let everyone off the hook, and it died down. We'd all agree some practices are not ethically harmful. Meditation apps benign enough. And religious communities often welcome borrowings, seeing them as a natural, necessary step for conversion. And it's likely that some people from a particular religion would take offense, but that others would be okay with it. It's not like all would agree one way or the other, and it's impossible to poll them all, even if by some chance, miraculously, you could figure out who all the real members were. If you have permission from some of the members, is that good enough? What if some of them say no? UU musician Jason Shelton writes that we should consider whether rituals or musical traditions of any culture really can be borrowed or can be owned by any person or group, stating cultural anthropologists have pointed out for years that all cultures are profoundly affected and necessarily changed by interaction with the other. Cultural exchange happens, is inevitable, necessary. Shelton argues that the possibility that any one ritual or custom can be claimed by a people or culture as solely their own invention without any influence from the cultural other is remote at best. Cultural traditions evolve through experiences of contact and exchange with others in peaceful trade situations and also situations of oppression and theft. And sometimes religious appropriation has positive effects. Yoga and meditation are good for us. Pilgrimage is northern Spain's main tourist product. Entire towns along the route profit by it. Thousands of businesses depend on the Camino, and they'd all be hard hit if only Roman Catholics went on the pilgrimage. At the heart of religious appropriation is the misperception that we avoid religious involvement in the negative things we associate about religion: dogma, hierarchies, creeds, institutions. But when we borrow religious practices, we may further marginalize the already religiously marginalized minority. Professor Buchar stresses that religious appropriation is a harmful variation of borrowing, and appropriation causes offense because it exacerbates injustice. And she emphasizes that intention is not what distinguishes the two. Buchar encourages us to listen to those already marginalized within a religious community, often females and people of color. And she urges us to reconnect our borrowed spiritual practices back to the communities and traditions that claim them, and educate ourselves to understand the religious meaning of the practices that we try on, so we will be less likely to consume the practice as a mere political, educational, or therapeutic commodity. We need to welcome uncomfortable conversations about privilege and power and take time to learn. Religious practices are part of rituals and can orient the mundane world to the divine, to God, and often are the very mechanism that creates belief. So religious appropriation isn't harmless and not merely harmful, but sometimes profoundly offensive. And we don't tend to see it as a problem because we're viewing religions as these large institutions rather than the people of that faith. There are no easy answers, but Jackie James writes that we as UUs are in a movement committed to responsible search for truth and meaning, and we must ask ourselves, why are we doing this? Does it help us be better UUs? Have we sought the feedback of anybody on the inside? What can we give back? We must seek those answers and act accordingly. Buchar encourages us to lean in on our borrowings. She says, borrow better, not less. Lean in, understand the practice, its context, its history, so you know what you're borrowing. I said I'd have more questions than answers for you this morning. No one can own religion, and borrowing is messy. Religious culture is tied to the divine, to God, and with our liberal religious faith, I think that sometimes we disregard that aspect too much, but it hopefully will give us some pause so we can perhaps not cause offense. There are no quick, easy fixes to the ethical dilemmas of religious appropriation, but an important first step is to acknowledge our borrowings, recognize harm we didn't intend, sit with that discomfort so we can learn and change our behavior to mitigate any harm we may have caused. Borrow better, not less. Lean in. Blessed be, and amen.
Our first task in approaching another people, another culture, another religion is to take off our shoes. For the place we are approaching is holy. Else we find ourselves treading on another's dream. More serious still, we may forget that God was there before our arrival. Be ours a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere, its temple all space, its shrine the good heart, its creed all truth, its ritual works of love, its profession of faith, divine living. Please join me in reciting the UUPF blessing. Bless us with care, bless us with love, bless all we share. Blessed be, Amen, Shalom, Salam, Namaste, Ashe.